What's up guys, and welcome to another Tech Gear Talk. Today we're going to check out one of my absolute favorite pieces of equipment, the Edelkrone SliderPLUS and Motion kit. And we're going to get to the Motion kit later on in this video. I'm going to show you how to build this from the ground up. I love adding camera movement to my videos, both when I'm doing product shots, reviews, or even when I'm shooting a video for a client. And this is one of my favorite tools to get that really buttery smooth footage. And this slider is totally packed with features, so let's take a closer look. Now, the Edelkrone SliderPLUS system is modular. So if you're not interested in the whole thing that I show you at the end, you can just pick and choose the parts that fit exactly what you need or what your budget is, and slowly build up until you get to the 4-axis motorized slider. Now, one of the reasons why I love this Edelkrone slider is that when you use all of the modules that I describe in this video, the interaction with the slider is really intuitive. And at the end of this video, I'm going to discuss the app, which is an integral part of this system, so make sure you stay tuned. As you know, my goal with every product review is to give you an overview of the features of the product, but in a way that relates to real life use. And if this video does a good job, please let me know by giving it a like and then hitting the subscribe and notification buttons for more video equipment and tech reviews. I'll also put some links in the description to where you can pick up any of the modules that I talk about, and then at the same time help support my channel for free and help me create more content for you. And I thank you in advance. All right, so let's get going. I want to start out by talking about just a slider in general. Now, most of you might know what a slider does for a camera and some of you may not. Basically, it allows you to mount a camera on the slider and then smoothly move it from side to side. And then depending on where the camera is pointed, you get that really nice effect. And again, it's super smooth. You can also point the camera in different directions and get push and pull like dolly shots. But that's basically the reason for why you might want to use a slider. If you just hold it in your hand and go across, it's never going to be that smooth because you're moving the camera up and down. For starters, I want to just talk about the slider. And this slider on its own will let you do manual shots, which means you can mount the camera onto the slider and then manually push it from side to side. So this is where most people start. It's obviously it's at the lower end of the budget, and you can mount the camera using a tripod head or a little module I'm going to show you in a second, and then manually push it from side to side to get that very smooth, consistent look. And what I like to use, I'm going to grab it right here, is the Edelkrone Flex Tilt Head 2. And now this may not look like much, but this is an awesome piece of gear. You should get one of these, whether you end up using this or not, because I use this all the time. So let me show you what I do with this. This is actually going to screw right up here at the top. And what this lets me do is mount my camera directly onto this slider, but it gives me some flexibility. So I'm going to go ahead and lift that up. And there you go. Now my camera is mounted. And this lets me point it in different directions. That's one thing I really like about this. The other thing is that sometimes when you create, you set up for a shot, you realize that you're off by about an inch or two. And usually you have to like lift things up or lower things. And what's nice about this is I can tilt this down or up. And because of the way this works, notice I was able to just lift the camera up just by an inch without having to change anything. I can obviously go a lot higher, and this keeps going. So I could still point it this way without, and then still get my shot without having to move a lot of things. So that's a really, really nice feature. Now, so far I'm showing you this slider being used on the ground or on a surface. And you can see that it will slide all the way from left to right. Again, super, super smooth. But this slider can actually be mounted onto a tripod. And what's really nice when you mount it onto a tripod is that the length of the slider actually doubles. The centerpiece will stay where it is, and then the slider itself will continue all the way to the left and then all the way to the right. And that lets you get a lot more than the width of the slider that you select. The other advantage of this design when you're doing a push or pull shots, and those are shots where the camera is actually pointed in the same direction as the slider, is that what happens is right now what you would see is that the lens actually sees the end of the slider. So that as I push it through, I'd have to get about halfway through or about here until the lens doesn't see the slider, and that limits how much I can push forward. When this is on top of a tripod, on the other hand, you have a lot more movement with the camera with the same length slider. This is critical. Now you want to make sure you have a very sturdy tripod if you're going to use this slider or really any slider, because you don't want the slider to be moving from side to side. You're going to see that in your footage. And you want to mount this slider directly onto the tripod using a 75 or 100 bull adapter so that you're not using a fluid head that has some flex in it. You want to keep things as rigid as possible so you have the smoothest footage that you can. Now this slider comes with 4 different lengths, and I chose the longest one because I want to have the most flexibility. I can always do a very small and tight slide without using the entire length, but when I do want to add that much camera movement, I have that flexibility. Okay, so let's move on. Now, sometimes when you try to do a slide, you'll realize that, especially with lighter rigs, it's very difficult to get a very smooth, slow slide. And to help with this, Edelkrone offers a steady module that uses fluid dynamics to help even out your slide and give you better results. So there's a tension adjustment on the one side that you can decide how fast or slow you want your camera to move. And this is an alternative to flywheel design that you may have seen on other sliders. So this is really simple. It gets attached to the slider here on the end. Let me just do that. I just want you to see how easy it is. Boom, it slides right in there. Tighten it in place. And now this module is actually controlling, it's giving me some resistance to push against. So you can see it's much easier to get a smoother slide than it was before, because before there really was no resistance. And I can actually control how much resistance I want there to be. So when I put this all the way to the tightest setting, now I really have to apply a good amount of force. And you can see just how slow, now I'm applying some force here, just how slow this is gonna move. And this is what you want. I know this seems like it's really slow, but when you go look at your footage, it's gonna look great. And again, this prevents me from speeding up and slowing down. It's really offering a nice amount of resistance. And I wasn't sure how this was gonna work because it's a different solution than what I've normally seen, but it's actually great. It's so small, it's easy to adjust the tension, and the results are fantastic. All right, so now we're gonna start kicking things up a notch, and we're gonna start introducing some automation. And the next thing I wanna look at is the Edelkrone Slide module. So the first thing we're gonna do is remove the steady module. Now, sometimes you wanna have a perfectly controlled slide because you either wanna control the speed, or you may want the carriage to loop back and forth, or you may wanna do some fun visual effect stuff in post-production. And in those cases, something like the slide module is great to have. Basically, it's a motorized add-on that you can attach to the SliderPLUS, and it will control the carriage for you. The slide module can be powered by 2 Canon LPE6 batteries or the provided DC plug. And the slide module is controlled by the SliderPLUS app. Now, it's absurdly easy to program. You literally push it to where you want it to start. Let's say here, I'm gonna hit A. I'm gonna push it over here to where I want it to end. And I'm gonna hit B, gotta hold it down. And then I can select how fast I want it to move from one point to the other. And I can just go ahead and hit go. And there you go. It's sliding all on its own. That's how long it took to use this. Set this up. Endpoint or start point, endpoint. And it's just gonna go from here to here. And if I want to ease in or out, I can go ahead and do that as well, so it doesn't come to an abrupt end. So you'll see it's going to slowly slow down before it stops, and then it's going to slowly accelerate at the beginning. So if I hit go again, it's going to send a command to the slide module, and there you go. It's picking up speed and completely hands-free. Like, that's awesome. Now I can also do things like add idle time on each side where it will stop. And then I can convert this program into a time lapse or a stop motion. And if I wanted to control this on my own, I can actually just use this and push it to the left, or push it to, that would be my right, or push it to my left. And I can control the slide manually, or I can just let it go. And of course I can just hit on B, and that's gonna go to the point that I set as B, or hit A and it will go to the point that I set as A. It's really, really easy. Now, if I wanted to convert this motion to a time lapse, that's super simple. I literally click on time lapse, and then a new screen comes up where I can select a delay in time. Let's say I don't want it to start right away. I want it to start in an hour or in a half an hour or in a few minutes. I can do that. I can decide about the duration of the time lapse in minutes or hours. And so let's say, for example, I want this to be a 20-minute time lapse. I can do that. I can select the frames per second setting. So my videos are all done in 30 frames per second. And then I can tell it either how many frames to shoot or how long to wait between each shot. So if I say wait 5 seconds and I hit done, it's going to show me that that's going to take 240 images within the 20 minutes. If I said I only want you to wait 3 seconds between each shot, it's going to take 400 images in those same 20 minutes. And that really just has to do with how much I want to speed up what's happening. And what's really nice is that all you have to do is change these very basic settings, and the slider will control everything else for you. There is a cable that goes from the slide module to the camera. It will control the shutter. It'll just take the pictures for you. You literally just hit start and you're good to go. And Edelkrone has awesome tutorials on their website. So if you have any questions, either drop me a line in the comment section or you can go check them out. They do a really good job in explaining how to use these different features. All right, now we're gonna get really fancy. So far, we've been looking at pretty simple movements, but now we're gonna take things up to the next level. Now, you may have heard the term axis used when people are talking about sliders. And up until now, we've been talking about a one-axis slider. Basically, it can only move left to right. So now the next thing we're gonna look at is the Edelkrone head module. And this is gonna add some ridiculous functionality to this slider. So the first thing we wanna do is take the camera off of the flex tilt head. We don't need it anymore. And we're actually gonna take this off of the slider as well. We're good to go. And instead, we're gonna take the Edelkrone head module and screw it right onto the module. And this little screw is on a little spring. It's spring loaded, so when I'm transporting it, I can leave it locked and I can just turn it and it pops up. So I just need to make sure that's on there. And then what you want to do is, because this will turn on its own, you want to tighten it at the bottom. All right, this first part's done. And then the way we mount the camera onto this is we're gonna take this, tighten it in place. I'm gonna slide that a little bit to the left. And what you can see is that this adds some really cool functionality that's coming. So now I'm gonna take my camera and mount it right to the head module. And there's a balancing procedure that you go through to make sure that this whole setup is balanced and it lets the head module work the least amount, which is what you want to preserve the battery and to get the smoothest shots, but it's super easy to do. And then finally, we're gonna take a network cable and we're gonna attach the slide module to the head module. And that's it. Now it's all connected. And now that we have the head module attached to the slider and connected to the slide module, we're gonna see some different options when we look at the phone. So I'm gonna go ahead and start the app. The first thing that the app is now gonna ask me is whether, again, the slider is on the ground or if it's on a slider. I'm gonna go ahead and I already told it that it's on the ground. And now it's gonna ask me to point this straight and make sure that it's leveled. So this is good enough. And I'm gonna go ahead and hit done. And now I can't wait to show you what we're gonna do now. We're gonna grab an object. This is, what is this? A Logitech MX S2, I think. And the first thing we're gonna do is use the target mode of the slider to track this subject. So I can move the slider to where I want it to start and hit A. And then again, move it to where I want it to stop and hit B. And now I'm gonna tell it to use this mouse as a target. So I can move this anywhere I want. And here is where it gets awesome. Instead of, again, like I said in the beginning, using a joystick or a controller, I can just take this and point it at exactly what I want. It's like literally that easy. And then I can click on target 1. And what this is saying is now move the slider somewhere else and then tell me where that target is. So I'm gonna push it to the right and I'm gonna say, okay, that's what the target is. And I'm gonna hit done. Now, when I tell the slider to move left, and I'm just doing it manually, I want you to see that as it slides, it's actually panning and tilting down to make sure that it's keeping that target right at the center of the frame. And there are some more advanced features, but just want to show you how easily I just did that. I didn't have to mess around with anything. I literally pointed it at what I wanted. So now I'm recording that slide. Now, I could also just hit go because I set my A and B points. So when I hit go, it's gonna go to the A point, and then I have it set to 36.8 seconds. So it's gonna take 36.8 seconds to get from one side, and I just changed some of my easing here. And there you go. It's moving from one side to the other, recording the subject. That is ridiculous for how little work that was to set up. Now it's important to say that if you're gonna use this feature, you're gonna pan and tilt, it's important to use a camera that has continuous autofocus so that as it's moving, getting closer and farther away from the subject, it's automatically adjusting the focus for you. I can also introduce a second target. So let's pretend I want this Rubik's Cube to be over there. So I'm gonna do the exact same thing. I'm gonna point at it. I'm going to set the focus. And I'm gonna say, this is target number 2. Again, the slider is gonna, I'll just use this instead of pushing it. I'm gonna move it farther down to the left, and then I'm gonna reframe this Rubik's Cube for my camera. So now I'm down here and I'm gonna say, okay, the Rubik's Cube is right there. Hit done. And now the slider knows both. So I can go ahead and click on A, and it's tracking this first Rubik's Cube, or the Rubik's Cube. And I'm gonna change the target. So when I click on target 1, you're gonna see that the slider went ahead and pointed at the mouse. And I can go ahead and start the slide. Now, while the slider is moving, so I'm gonna let it start on its way. And during this movement, right now it's at target number 1. which is the mouse. I'm gonna hit target number 2, and it's gonna pan and tilt to get the Rubik's Cube, and now it's tracking the Rubik's Cube. That's silly. That's ridiculous. That I literally did this in a few seconds. And once again, you can convert all of these movements into a time lapse or a stop motion. So really, the sky's the limit here. Okay, but what happens when you're using a camera that doesn't have continuous autofocus, or maybe you just don't want to use continuous autofocus, and we can talk about why later. So if a 3-axis slider where you can slide, pan, and tilt is not enough for you, let's go ahead and look at the 4th axis, which will be focus. The focus module actually gets attached to the head module, and I'll show you how it connects to your camera. So basically, you're gonna take this, slide it in here, and you're gonna wanna line up, and there's a great tutorial on their website. You're gonna line this up and then just tighten it in place. Then I'm gonna take this cable from under here and connect it to the head module. And now I can control, everything. So as soon as I do that, new options appear within the app. Now there's a calibration process that you go through for each lens that you're gonna use. And it's really simple. They give you all the information that you need. And again, you do it one time for each combination of lens and camera. So there is a little bit of work, but it doesn't take more than a couple of minutes. And once you have it saved on your app, you can actually upload it to a community that shares lenses. And also, if you use different devices like I do, I can go ahead and very easily share it between devices that way. So the first thing I'm gonna do, I'm using a 24-70 2.8 L series from Canon. So I'm gonna go ahead and select that. And what you'll see is that the focus module will start turning. And what it's doing is finding out where the infinity and minimum focus distance are for this particular lens. And now it knows where it is. Notice that it stopped right here. And what it's going to be able to do now is when I tell it to keep something in focus, it's going to know how to do that on its own. So I'm going to take this bottle of Red Bull, not sponsored, and I'm going to use that as my second target. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my camera and point it at this bottle of Red Bull. And then I can actually use the app to focus. So I'm going to push this up, and you can see that as I do this, this is actually turning. It might be hard to see, but it is. Once I have it in focus, I go ahead and hold down target 1, and believe it or not, that's it. So now all I have to do is hit go. And as the slider moves from point A to point B, it's going to keep the Red Bull can framed. We know that because it's already panning and tilting to keep it exactly where it needs to be. But the focus module is actually turning very slowly to keep it in focus. That is awesome. So once it gets to the end, what we're gonna do is we're gonna do the same thing with a second target, just like we did before. You done? All right, cool. So now, zoom in, change the focus. Let's do that. There you go, it's in focus. I'm gonna hit target 2, done. And I'm gonna click on target 1, and this is gonna focus on the first target. I'm gonna hit record. It's recording, yep. Hit go. And you can see that the slider is going to start moving, and it's adjusting the focus slowly. And then whenever I want during this movement, let's say right here, I click on target 2, and it's shifting targets and at the same time pulling focus. And that's the magic. If I try to do this with continuous autofocus, what would happen is that as the camera panned from the can to the mouse, when it was over here, the autofocus wouldn't know what I'm trying to do. So it would start hunting back and forth, and you'd see it because this would be in frame and this would be in frame as it's moving. Then once I got over this object, then it would get focus. But what's happening now because of the focus module is that the lens is actually pulling focus during this movement. So when it hits this new subject, it's already in focus. And that's awesome. Now, what's crazy is that you can set up to 6 targets. So I can have this slide and this is focusing on this one and this one and this one. So I can move it during the slide. It's really, I've never even gotten to 6. I've done 3 because I couldn't even think of a scenario where I would want 6, but I'm sure you guys can think of a way to do it. Now, if you'd rather not use targets and have the camera follow them, and you'd rather have specific static positions, meaning I want it to focus here, then I want it to slide, and as it's sliding, focus there, continue there, you can use what are called key poses. And that is, instead of giving you a target again that's dynamically being followed, it gives you a certain position that the slider is gonna stay at. So you can move it from position A to B to C to D, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and it will do that. And that's helpful when there are certain elements that you want to shift the viewer's attention to, but not during a continuous slide. So you may want to start here, then someone's talking over there, you can slide and focus on them, slide and focus on the next person, maybe go back to the first person. It's super versatile. All right, so if you're looking to add some amazing camera movement, the Edelkrone SliderPLUS with Motion Kit are an awesome option. You have full control over slide, pan, tilt, and focus, so you're always going to get exactly the shot that you want. The app is super easy to use, and this is something that I don't think you should overlook. It's great to have a product that can do a lot of very sophisticated things, but it's not good if you can't easily get it to do those things. The point and click aspect of this app is one of my favorite aspects of this whole system. I'm not programming keyframes for each axis separately, and everything I need to do is right there at my fingertips. The interface is clean, and for me, the whole user experience has been very good. There's always some level of give and take when it comes to features and ease of use. So as you add more features to a device, it becomes more complicated to operate. And this slider with the Motion Kit ranks high for me in both functionality and ease of use. And that's what originally attracted me to looking at this combo. Like I said, I love tech that can do really cool things, but I'm also not trying to spend hours trying to figure out how to get a 3-second shot. And this is so easy. Again, point, focus, click, and go. Like, how much easier could it get? I'll put some links in the description to where you can pick up all of these modules, because there are always specials and discounts going on, and those links will be updated with the lowest prices. And also, like I mentioned before, if you use those links, you help support my channel for free and help me create some more videos for you. If you have any questions for me, go ahead and put them in the comment section below, and I do my best to answer every single comment. I really hope I was able to give you a good overview of the Edelkrone SliderPLUS and Motion Kit combo. If I did, please let me know by giving this video a thumbs up, and then tweet it, share it, and hit the subscribe and notification buttons for more video equipment and tech reviews. You can always find me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Tech Gear Talk. And you know what I always say, buy it nice or buy it twice. Good luck and see you soon.